This time on Landmarks, we look at one of the great waterfalls of the world. We stay at another landmark hotel, are humbled by the remnants of the Genbaku Dome, and are inspired by the artistry of the Sistine Chapel's decorator. But first, this is a landmark as mysterious as it is magnificent. Mont-saint-michel is a rocky island in Normandy, France. It is located just a kilometre off the country's north coast, at the mouth of the Couesnon River near Avranches. It is an architectural wonder, blending the natural environment of the island mount with remarkable feats of engineering and architecture. William de Volpiano, an Italian, was chosen as building contractor by Richard II of Normandy in the 11th century. He designed the Romanesque church of the abbey, daringly placing the transept crossing at the top of the mount. According to legend, the Archangel Michael appeared to St. Aubert, Bishop of Avranches, in 708 and instructed him to build a church on the rocky isle. Aubert repeatedly ignored the angel's instruction until Michael burned a hole in the bishop's skull with his finger. A church was built, and the religious connection has never been lost, despite the many trials the abbey and its inhabitants have undergone since. The mount gained strategic significance in 933 when William Longsword, Duke of Normandy, annexed the Cotentin Peninsula, definitively placing the mound in Normandy. It is depicted in the Bayeux Tapestry, which commemorates the 1066 Norman conquest of England. Ducal patronage financed the spectacular Norman architecture of the abbey in subsequent centuries. In 1067, the monastery of Mont-saint-michel gave its support to William, Duke of Normandy, in his claim to the throne of England. It was rewarded with properties and grounds on the English side of the Channel. Like many ancient fortresses, it has seen its share of tragedy. In 1204, the Breton Guy de Tours, allied to the King of France, undertook the seat of the mount. After having set fire to the borough and having massacred the population, he was constrained to beat a retreat under the powerful walls of the abbey. Unfortunately, the fire which he himself lit extended to the buildings and the roofs fell prey to the flames. Horrified by the cruelty of his ally, King Philip Augustus offered Abbot Jourdan a grant for the construction of a new Gothic-style architectural setting, which included the addition of the refectory and cloister. During the 100 Years' War, the English made repeated assaults on the island, but were unable to seize it, partly due to the abbey's improved fortifications. The Michelettes, two wrought iron bombards left by the English in their failed 1423 to 1424 siege of Mont-saint-michel, are still displayed near the outer defence wall. Charles VI is credited with adding major fortifications to the abbey mount, building towers, successive courtyards, and strengthening the ramparts. However, its popularity and prestige as a centre of pilgrimage waned with the Reformation, and by the time of the French Revolution, there were scarcely any monks in residence. The abbey was closed and converted into a prison, initially to hold clerical opponents to the Republican regime. High-profile political prisoners followed. But in 1836, influential figures, including Victor Hugo, had launched a campaign to restore what was seen as a national architectural treasure. The prison was finally closed in 1863, and the mount was declared a historic monument in 1874. Mont-saint-michel was given UNESCO World Heritage status in 1979, but as long as Mont-saint-michel stands on its lonely island, it will remain a symbol of mystery and contemplation, the intriguing keeper of secrets. Coming up next, Niagara Falls. It's one of the most spectacular sights on the planet. Niagara Falls. While not exceptionally high, they are very wide and powerful. More than 6 million cubic feet of water falls over the crest every minute, which, besides providing inspiration to the romantically inclined, is also a great source of power to industry. While the falls are mostly associated with Canada, they in fact straddle the Canadian and United States borders. They are spread between the Canadian province of Ontario and the US state of New York. Niagara Falls is composed of two major sections, the Horseshoe Falls in Canada and the American Falls on the United States side. The smaller Bridal Veil Falls is also located on the American side. The Niagara Falls were formed when glaciers receded at the end of the last ice age, about 10,000 years ago, and water from the then newly carved Great Lakes bore a channel through what became the Niagara Escarpment. Besides delighting honeymooners for decades, the falls have been a source of hydroelectric power since the 1890s. Though the area had long been inhabited by Iroquois Indians, the first white records were written by French explorer Samuel de Champlain in 1604. Tourism became a popular pastime in the area as early as the 1700s. By mid-century, it was the main industry. Its romance didn't take long to capture the attention of the romantic. For most of the 20th century, Niagara Falls has been the ideal honeymoon location. But as with any remarkable natural phenomenon, there are some who look upon it as a challenge to be conquered. The foolhardy stuffed themselves into barrels and rolled themselves over the falls. The Yankee leaper, Sam Patch, tried his luck in 1829 and survived. But not all of the 15 or so have been so lucky. This is Bobby Leach, who in 1911 got a closer view of the falls than most when he went over the crest in this iron barrel. Note the severe dent. One daredevil pilot, Lincoln Beachley, even flew under the Niagara Falls Bridge in 1911. The American steamboat Caroline had the misfortune to go over the falls in 1837. Not by choice, of course. It had been caught supplying Canadian rebels and was set adrift by the English. Now global warming is having an impact. The flow of water is reducing, while at the same time industry is redirecting the river flow to its own needs, which is to service industry rather than the lakes and rivers.
Climate change is probably the greatest threat today on biodiversity. It affects all the other ecosystems. It affects forest ecosystems, marine ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems.
The irony of global warming and Niagara Falls is that the falls were one of the pioneering projects that established the modern use of electricity as a domestic power source. The invention of alternating current in the 1880s led to power being distributed over long distances. Since then, nearly 3/4 of Niagara's water has been diverted to hydroelectric uses, and there are plans to use even more. Following a massive public letter-writing campaign in support of restoring and maintaining Niagara Falls as a place of natural beauty, the Niagara Reservation became New York's first state park in 1885. The move was matched in Canada by the establishment of the Niagara Parks Commission, which governs the entire course of the river from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. But over the course of time, urban development has encroached on this area of remarkable beauty. Still, tourists flock to the area to enjoy what many believe to be one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth. So far in this series of landmarks, we've visited several different hotels. There was the Fish Hotel in Singapore. The guests seemed quite happy there. And the Animal Hotel in Hanoi. Management looked like they'd have no trouble as long as there was a ball around. Although some guests looked as though they would have been happier at the Fish Hotel. Then there's the more serious efforts of Frank Gehry's spectacular, the Marquis de Riscal Hotel in the heart of the Rioja wine-growing region in Spain. But we haven't ignored the future either. Welcome to the Five Senses Hotel. It was a model for a hotel put on show at a London exhibition. The futuristic display consisted of a series of rooms which drew on the 5 senses to create an environment visitors just wouldn't want to leave. On first glance, there's nothing to alert the senses that something special is a few steps away, but soon everything changes. You walk into a hotel room that'll wrap you in a cocoon of your own senses. Before we look inside the room of the future, let's set the mood. There are capsules to make us appreciate our different perceptions. A bit of mood lighting, our sense of smell, and that other feeling, touch, and the sensation produced by different materials, many of which we seem to have lost touch with, so to speak. Welcome to the hotel room created by international designer Yasmin Mahmoudieh.
It doesn't have to be like their home, it should be an experience that they will remember, and especially when you travel a lot around the world. I think it's very important that you are aware of the country you are in, but you get inspiration from a place. You feel very comfortable, and as in this exhibition 5+ Sense Hotel, all your senses are tuned in. And I think it's very important to be very creative, but also to look at human needs and the condition of human beings. Understanding, psychology, I think, of human people is quite actually important for hotel design. The most important thing is, as you enter this room, you have a touch panel in the beginning where you can actually personalize your room. You have 3 different choices between morning, day and evening mood, with or without music. It's all pre-arranged, so it's very easy to handle. If you are walking on the carpet, which is almost like a dune, it's 3-dimensional. It's very nice to walk on it barefoot. A very important element is the lighting, where you have a lot of indirect lighting, and you can change the color of the lighting by these 3 touch panels. Here also the drapes, we have Swarovski crystals laser cut into the fabrics, which obviously is going to give you a sense of luxury for this 5-star hotel.
The theme continues into the bathroom. Of course, there's mood lighting for while you brush your teeth. And then coloured lighting for the improbably sized bath. If you don't like the colour, you can change it. Music sets the mood, but you'll have to visit to smell the perfume. All are designed to entice the visitor to stay for more than one night. It's expected for ordinary travellers, such indulgences will become commonplace in the near future. Coming up next, the Genbaku Dome. This is the Enola Gay, and it is carrying an atomic bomb. What began as a fine spring day in the Japanese city of Hiroshima in August 1945 became one of those history-defining moments that changed the world. This devastating weapon led to the end of hostilities in World War II, but also snuffed out the lives of more than 100,000 people in an instant. The city was laid waste. Very few buildings survived. Most were either vaporized, crushed, or burnt to the ground during the ensuing firestorm. But one building, the Hiroshima Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, which stood very close to Ground Zero, partially withstood the onslaught and became a powerful symbol. Today, this landmark has been renamed the Genbaku Dome, or A-bomb dome, and stands as a testament to the devastation of the first city struck by an atomic weapon, and symbolises the hope of world peace and disarmament. Left unchanged from the day of the attack, the building has been listed as a World Heritage Site, although China and the United States objected. It is now part of the Hiroshima Peace Park. The debate since has been between those who believe the act of dropping an atomic bomb was justifiable because it avoided a land-based invasion of Japan, thus saving hundreds of thousands of lives, and those who opposed its use, saying it left subsequent generations with a terrible burden. Besides leading to genetic illnesses and mutations that are still being seen today, the proliferation of nuclear weapons has been one of the biggest issues to confront humanity since that day in August. Artists have been among those who have grappled with the questions the dropping of the Hiroshima bomb has raised.
What I'm trying to achieve here is trying to present two sides of the argument. There's a lot of documentations around, and it's up to the viewer to come to some sort of conclusion on the right and wrong of what had happened 60 years ago.
Featuring more than 100 works from artists around the world, After Hiroshima, Nuclear Imaginaries coincided with the 62nd anniversary of the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. The exhibition curator was inspired by the story of a survivor who was just 7 years old when the bomb was dropped.
What happened in Hiroshima is almost signified the beginning of a new era in some ways. And also because this year is the 6th anniversary, and 60 in Japan means the beginning of a new era in Japanese culture.
World War II had been the bloodiest conflict in human history, yet its dramatic climax with the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki shocked even a war-jaded world. The race to achieve nuclear superiority has never really stopped. Fortunately, the lessening of tensions has seen the destruction of many of the world's 50,000 nuclear warheads, but more than enough remain to destroy all living things several times over.
Only way forward, the absolutely common sense way, is negotiations on a treaty to abolish all nuclear weapons everywhere. And that involves inspection of sites, criminalizing scientists, controlling fissile material, having satellite observation, all practical things that can be done in order to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and to move towards disarmament.
The name Michelangelo has resonated throughout the world for 5 centuries. An unsurpassed artistic master in whichever medium he put his hand to: painting, sculpture, fresco and drawing. Even in the unlikely event you haven't heard his name, it's likely you would know of his masterpieces such as this, the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. Or his magnificent statue of David, hewn from a single block of Sienna marble. To be in its presence has humbled many a viewer and brought them to tears. The 16th century genius had an amazingly long and prolific career, and we are fortunate many of his works have survived. The British Museum recently hosted its first Michelangelo exhibition in 30 years. A collection of drawings, Michelangelo drawings, closer to the master.
Well, Michelangelo had a very, very long career. We know that he was working as an apprentice at the age of 12, and he was working until right at the end of his life when he was 88. And he did all sorts. He was a painter, he was a sculptor, he was an architect, and as you say, he was a poet. And you see all those, the thing that links all of those except for poetry is drawing. He before he began to paint, to sculpt, to think about designing a building, he would do that on paper. Drawing was central to everything he did.
The display featured 90 drawings, including a collection of thumbnail sketches and red chalk studies, which reveal the genesis of the painting of the Sistine Chapel roof in the Vatican Palace. Also on display are black and white chalk studies of the Last Judgment on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel, architectural drawings for the Basilica of St. Peter's, and the drawings of the Crucifixion, which changed in style as Michelangelo reached the end of his own life.
I think you do gain an understanding about Michelangelo by looking at his drawings. You get an idea that how amazingly hard-working he is, how driven he is. He's not somebody who's going to accept the mediocre. He's always going to keep on working and refining and working out ideas on paper until he's reached a satisfactory conclusion. And the other thing that we see is a really great religious artist. Michelangelo was somebody who really believed in heaven, believed in hell, and that gives his religious art an incredible power.
In many ways, the 21st century is fortunate to have a collection of Michelangelo drawings handed down to us. The Italian Renaissance sculptor, painter, poet and architect regularly destroyed his sketches. For example, the drawings for his famous sculpture of David are no longer in existence.
Well, it's a very mysterious act why he destroyed so many of his late drawings at the end of his life. I think it's the ultimate act of power, is I'm not going to allow anybody to see my drawings, so I'm going to actually destroy them. I think he wants you to go and look at his finished work and not realise the labour that went into it.
Michelangelo himself did not want people to see the technical work that went into his final masterpieces, but many a viewer at the British Museum was thankful to have such a personal element of his work survive. Amazingly, if it was up to Michelangelo's father, his son would never have become an artist, who, like many of the Florentine gentry at that time, considered it to be beneath them. Born in 1476, he began a 3-year apprenticeship at age 12. A peer of Leonardo da Vinci, it was Pope Clement VIII who commissioned him to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Despite his physical discomfort and pain, he completed the commission in 1541.
But I think looking at his drawings, you come away with a hugely enhanced appreciation of Michelangelo's genius. So I think in that respect he was wrong.